Hello everybody, welcome back. Excel VBA for beginners, 30 real world problems and solutions. How are you doing? How was your weekend? It's Monday. Yes, we're back with more practical Excel VBA that is going to move your career forward. Let's get into our random problem generator. I have done a bit of tweaking. Hopefully we're going to avoid the situation where we're returned name as an Excel VBA problem. Can you let me know in the chat, by the way, if you can see me and you can hear me okay? Let's go ahead and start this. And let's see what we've got coming today. Yesterday, we moved we moved data from a template to a database. I showed you the way I actually do that. Had some good feedback on that already. So well done to the people who got that working. The winning ball's coming down here. And then we've got this code to create one button per row. What is this all about? I'll explain in just a second. Let me know in the chat. Is this something you've done? Just let me know in the chat, yes or no. Have you ever tried to create one button for each row of data? Let's get into the chat quickly and see who's with us today. So the cricket is on, guys. The cricket is on at the moment. Exciting stuff. So for our non-UK friends, our American friends, we're going to have to do some translation for you about what this all means. Welcome Deepak. Welcome DC. DC fresh after a busy weekend doing IKEA stuff. Good job, DC. Andrew is with us. Andrew Button. Frank is with us. Welcome. Ian Lamb is with us. Welcome. Phil is with us. Welcome. Abdul. Jasfin. Welcome. Zana. 8 o'clock over in San Francisco. Good to have you with us. Abdul, have I already said Abdul? Welcome, Abdul, again. Florin, welcome. The Beatty, welcome. Daniel is with us today, 93 degrees. Are we going to top 100 degrees during the series? Who knows? Daniel, welcome. Henrik is with us. Welcome. Nikki is with us. Welcome. Nikki, a big welcome to our Members Monday community. You're going to love it. We're going live in Members Monday after this stream. Is that everybody? Maria is with us. Welcome, Maria. Klaus. And anybody else I've missed, you're very welcome. Thank you for being with us today. So has anybody tried to do this one button for each row that we're going to try to do today? Let's go ahead, save the random problem generator. So let's go ahead and create some data here. So let's create some cricket data. Why not? Okay. So let's have the match here. The match, the date, and then the number of runs we scored, and then the wickets that fell. So maybe some people in the chat, I know Andrew Button is somebody who knows something about cricket, so maybe you can help out with some of these terms. So Alt-HOH 30, Alt-HW. Okay, and then, match. So let's just use our usual formulation here. So this is going to be row -6. That's going to give us match 1. Let's just have 10 matches here. Whoops. Control D, not Control V. 12 matches will do. Date. So let's start with today. Okay, and then let's go for a random number of days away from today. So I can just say this date plus ran between. And let's say 7 and 10. So it's a kind of a tournament feel. Maybe this is our Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions Cricket World Cup here. Control C, Control Alt V, V is going to get the values. So then we need some random runs scored. What do we think? So let's say it's a 2020 game here. Score could be between 90 and 220. There we go. Control D again. And then wickets fell. Well, that's going to be a random number between 0 and 10. And then we can take that down as well. And then we're going to copy the values, Control C, Control Alt V, and V here. Okay, so we've got our data set there. And let's call it Cricket Database. So I hope you're going ahead and creating the data with me. You know, just these practical Excel skills, getting your fingers building that muscle memory that you need to use things like keyboard shortcuts and just get simple jobs done quickly. It's all really important practice. So what am I talking about here then? Well, let's go ahead, put a button in manually first, although the way we're doing it is not manual. We're going to use VBA to do this. We've already seen this in the series. Was it the first video we did? The second video we did? I'm not sure. We want something like, we might want to edit this data. Okay, and this again is a mechanism I use in my files a lot. So we have one button next to each row. Hold down the Control key and the Alt key to the position to do the positioning. And the idea is clicking this button gives you an easy way to work with this row in some way, to do something to the data in this row. Now you might say, well, I could just do this manually. We could have a drop-down menu maybe to help us select the row, but all of those things require additional clicking. Over the years, I've found the easiest way to do it, and I find customers love it, is to have little buttons down the side of the data that allow you to do things to the data. In order to get that set up, well, you might say, yeah, I can just create these buttons manually. But believe me, even if you just had to create these 12 buttons manually, that is going to become onerous. Onerous is another word that my first Excel VBA teacher, Andrew Martin, Warwick Business School, taught me, is using your VBA application onerous. So we want to be able to create one button for each row, provides another button at the top. Let's copy here. Provide another button at the top somewhere, up here, and this button is going to be the Create Buttons button. Create Buttons, something like that. And then when we click that button, it's going to go and look at our data set here, and it's going to create one button for each row. That's what we're looking to do. So how are we going to go about doing that? So here we've got to think about our conceptualization. Can you create some pseudocode? So literally speak out in your own language. How is this going to work? Can you begin to assemble some tools from your Excel VBA toolkit to help you get this done? Okay, a couple of things to get started. Let's go ahead and open the VBA editor. We're certainly going to have to use it at some point. We know that. Let's go ahead and open it now. Get some kind of reasonable alignment for your screenshot here. Insert, module, option explicit, of course. I think we will be using variables here. There we go. And then an informative name for the macro, create buttons. This macro is literally going to create these buttons and position them. So that's a sensible informative name for this macro. So I'm going to suppose that I'm going to just delete these buttons here, the second button and the third button, and I'm going to keep this button as my kind of example button, we could say, when we're going to copy paste from this button. So this button we have here is always going to be there. That means however we set up this button, the other buttons are going to be set up in the same way, because we're going to copy those buttons from our example button here. So first we've got to think, well, what do we want the buttons to do? What do we want the buttons to look like? You don't want to create the buttons and then have to go through them and edit the text and do things like that. And for me, just saying edit is going to be absolutely fine. But one thing to think about at this point is assigning a macro to the button, because the button's going to do something. So I'm going to create another routine in the file and just say do something here. And this might do something like code to help the user edit entries in the row. I've done this with all kinds of things. I've done this with buttons down the side saying email. Remember earlier in the series, we went through the VBA code to email via Outlook. So you could just have buttons down the side here saying email. How cool is that? And it's going to set up an email with the data in that row and email it to somebody. That's very similar to a setup I've created in the past few months for one of my customers. Equally, this button, we need to assign a macro. What's this button going to do? Well, it's going to create the buttons. So I'm benefiting from giving my routines, the macros, informative names. We want that macro to create buttons. Other things to bear in mind through this series, we've touched on managing shapes and buttons in the file using the, what's it called again? The selection pane, of course. So if you go to page layout and then selection pane here, or we can go Alt PAP on the Windows PC. It's going to show us all of the objects on the sheet. Shapes and charts are going to show up here. So this can be really useful. So button 4, I believe this is. Yeah, okay, that's button 1. I'm going to change the name of this button and just call it, let's call it Start But. Something like that. Now, as a kind of matter of good practice these days, all of the objects on a sheet, I make sure I name. So you don't have button 1, chart 1, shape 1, whatever it might be. If you have a shape, sometimes it's like square, cornered, snip, type, rectangle 1. You're like, what on earth does that mean? So I'm trying to discipline myself to name all of the objects on the sheet. And the selection pane is great for doing that. It doesn't mean you have to go through and name them all manually, of course, because you can use VBA. As we're going to see, you can use VBA to name objects here. But this button, which is the button at the top there, create buttons, let's just call it create but. There we go. Okay, and hit enter there so I can see I've now got my shapes named. The selection pane, pretty useful, so make sure you're using it. So into the VBA editor here. So how are we going to do this? Well, let's copy paste the starter button. Starter button. And then position the button that is created in the next empty row. But something to bear in mind before we even get started, something to bear in mind is to delete existing buttons. And these days I always do this first, because if we're going to be creating buttons and running code to create buttons, we want to avoid the situation where we have millions and millions of buttons on the sheet. If we're using precise position control, and that's what we're going to do, we can have a situation where one button is stacked on another button and it doesn't even look like there's more than one button there. So to avoid being overwhelmed by buttons, let's go ahead and create the delete buttons code. We're going to run that before we create the buttons to make sure all of the buttons are deleted. Okay, so we're going to use a for each loop here. So for each object in a collection. I think it's Chris button. We'll see. Is it the button variable? I think it is. We're going to see. I might have to use an object variable. Then we can say for each Chris but in. Okay, I'm going to say active sheet.button. So I'm going to assume that we're going to run this code from this sheet. I'm using active sheet, but you could also use the name of the sheet here because maybe you're running this code remotely. Okay, and let's just have message box chrisbut.name. Let's just see if this mechanism is actually working. Hit the F5 key here. Yep, and we've got start but there. And the next button, we've got create but there. So just see if you can get that basic code working, looping through objects in the collection. And then we're going to delete the buttons according to their names. We did this the other day as well, didn't we? You see how all these sessions are kind of working together, synergizing together. Let's delete all of the buttons that aren't called create button or start button. This is create but. And this is start but. So how do we translate that logic into VBA? So if chrisbutton.name, chrisbut.name does not equal start but. So I can see the selection pane still outside of your screenshot. So it's helping me again. And let's go ahead and have an underscore here. chrisbut.name does not equal, what's the name of the other button? The other button is create but, I think it was. Yep, looking at the selection pane there. Then we want to delete the button. Okay. So at the moment, we've only got 2 buttons on the sheet. I'm going to go ahead and create another button now. Hold down the control key, create another button. It's also called start but, which is quite annoying. So I'm going over to the selection pane now. And let's just change this name. Let's call this random but. So I'm just testing this code to delete the buttons. Let's bring the VBA editor back. So now we should be able to run this code. And we're expecting this button we've just created. We're expecting that button to disappear. That's all that should happen. And the other buttons hopefully won't. if and then, and we need an end if here, of course. Hopefully everybody in the chat spotted that. What are you doing? Yeah, I broke one of my golden rules there, which is when you open a conditional statement, always make sure you close it. When you open a loop, always make sure you'll close it, or you'll forget to do it. And we can see, yeah, we lost one of our buttons there, but the two buttons we wanted to stay, the start but and the create but here, just right click, we can see we've kept those. So we've created a routine to delete buttons that aren't the buttons we need. So we're now going to call this routine before we create the new button. So that's going to clear the sheet out. And once again, you know, that wasn't actually the focus of this stream, but it's just good to get ahead of the game there. Get ahead of the game and avoid the situation where you have total chaos, where you've got like hundreds and hundreds of buttons on the sheet. So straight after today's stream, we're going into Members Monday, going to be starting about 5 o'clock. And if you want to take your code to professional level, you know, this probably isn't for you if you just want to learn a new formula or a new piece of VBA. If you want to take your code to professional level, then I'd recommend checking out Members Monday, joining up with Members Monday. We have a weekly live stream, a Facebook group. We have an Excel-based content navigator. So every stream I index and you can quickly find different topics just by clicking on it. On one of the pieces of data, it's going to hyperlink you to the stream and the point in the stream where we're talking about that thing. You're going to be part of a community. I'm bringing people onto the streams now, talking about Excel, trying to solve real world problems. It's your Excel VBA real world, we could say, Excel VBA skills development community. Members Monday. Click join below this video for more. If you join today, we're going to go straight into a stream at about 5 o'clock UK time. So I'd love to see you there. What's been going on in the chat then? Are people keeping up with me? Tim just checking in. So welcome, Tim. Lee is with us today. Welcome, Lee. Thomas is with us as well. Good to see you, Thomas. And Asim John is with us. Welcome, Asim John. Good to have you with us. Okay. Let's get back into the code here. Right. So we're going to copy. Yeah, just to remind you, we're trying to go back to the situation where we have one button for each line of code here. So we want to copy our starter button. And let's say active sheet, buttons, and it's start but dot copy. Now I just say active sheet dot paste here. I think we're going to see if this works. So hopefully this is just going to create duplicate this button here. Let's go ahead and see what happens. I'm going to use the F8 key. So first we're going to go to delete buttons here. So hitting the F8 key. And then we're back into our original routine. So we've copied the start but button. We can't see that, unfortunately, like when you copy a cell, we can see the marching ants around the cell. We can't see that when we're using objects. But we did see another button appearing just there. Did you see that? Let's just run the code again and we should have another button appearing here. There we go. We've got another button. And again, I always do this, just create some code and then keep running it. Just, you know, the magic never goes away. I always say that. That feeling of code working for you, it never goes away. And now I can quickly delete them into the delete buttons code, hit the play button, and we're down to... no, we're not, because all of these buttons have the start but name, unfortunately. How would you deal with this? Let's deal with this by, it's going to right click here, by selecting objects. So this is super useful when you work with objects like buttons, for example. Let's go let's go home. And then over on the right, find and then select objects. If you want to do that using keyboard shortcuts, and why would you not want to do that using keyboard shortcuts? Alt H F D O. And Excel is, I say it puts Excel in PowerPoint mode. We can't tell, it doesn't look any difference, but when you click and drag, Excel's going to select the objects there. So it's a bit like being in PowerPoint where you can click and drag and select multiple things. So that's Excel in select objects mode. If you hit escape, it's going to take Excel back to the normal mode. So we're making some progress. We've managed to copy the button, duplicate the button. So now we want to say change the name of the button. Let's do that first. Okay, and before we do this, in fact, we're going to go ahead and think, how many buttons do we actually want to create here? Let's have a counter variable. Okay, I'm going to kind of do this manually first. How many buttons do we want? So I can see at the bottom now, we've got 12 cells selected there, 12 cells counted in the selection. So we can now say for counter equals 1 to, I'm going to say 11 because one of our buttons is already created. Our starter button is already created, of course. We can then say something like this. So we want to give this button a name. And we can do that by using the variable. Yeah, remember we've got a variable here. Every time we go through this loop, the value of the variable is going to increase by 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And we can then use that variable, combine it with some text to give the button a name. This is going to avoid the confusion that I've just encountered where we're creating multiple buttons with the same name. I'm just going to put this copy code. I'm just going to put this outside of the loop. We don't need to do that copy command every time, I don't think, but we're going to see if we do. Hit the F5 key now. We can see we've got multiple buttons there. Now I'm going to go back to the selection pane, Alt-PAP or page layout and selection pane. Bring that into your screenshot. On the right, we can see all of the buttons we've created there. And you can see the buttons have different names. How cool is that? You see how, as with any VBA task, there was a bit of upfront work to get everything working. But once things start coming together, it's just magic. As I said, the feeling of elation never really goes away. So we've managed to give the button a name. Now we want to position the button. How about that? And what methods are going to help us to do this? So, okay, how to do this? How to do this? I can think of a few different ways of doing this. Right, let's try this. Okay, B and let's do something simple to begin with, actually. So B4 dot top. Okay, so what's going on here? And does this even work? I'm trying to remember myself. Does this even work? But we're saying to Excel, the top property is the vertical positioning of the object. We've seen this before in Excel VBA for absolute beginners, the 30 for 30 series as well. We've also got the dot left property, or is it dot right? Let me know in the chat. Is it dot left or the dot right property? DC says, yeah, this is a good one. Using dot add allows you, there's a few different ways to do this, and DC's got some good ideas in the chat as well. What's going to happen now? So if you're watching on replay, just stop the stream and try to guess what's going to happen. So I can see we've got a few buttons created, and they're actually all in a line. So the vertical position is identical there. Back to the VBA editor, delete the buttons, hit the F5 key. So now we've got the vertical positioning. What about the horizontal positioning? Is it left or is it right? I think it's left. We're going to see. And what I haven't mentioned, of course, is Excel, it has the top and the left properties for cells in the spreadsheet as well. So we're saying to Excel, make the top property of this button the same as the top property of B4. Make the left property the same as the left property of B4. Not doing exactly what we want it to do yet, but give us a couple of minutes. We're going to get there. So hit the F5 key again. So we've now got a load of buttons that are stacked up. If I move one of these buttons, you can see it's like there's Russian dolls. You can see there's more and more underneath, concealed. And I've been in a situation like this where I've had thousands of buttons stacked up and just not even realized. So I'm going to go ahead, delete the buttons, F5. Okay, so we're getting close. We're certainly getting close. So the left property I'm happy with because the horizontal positioning is going to be the same, and it's going to be the same as as column B, so that should be okay. But the vertical positioning, so the top property, again, stop the video and think, how might we do this? Well, the first one should be in row 8. So how can we get an 8 here? Well, we can say counter plus 7. Why is that? I told you this variable was going to help us. So the counter variable is increasing by 1 each time we go through the loop. The first time it goes through the loop, it equals 1. So by saying counter plus 7, we're going to get to B8. Yeah, that's why we want the first button. The next time we go through the loop, we're going to go to B9, then B10, B11. That's the power of this integer variable. It's increasing by 1 every time we go through the loop. That allows us to do things like we're doing now. Pretty cool stuff. Let's go ahead, hit F5, and we can see we've got our buttons there. Nicely positioned, not perfectly positioned, but nicely positioned there. So now you can go ahead and do things like, I'm going to do something with this do something variable here. And let's just say message box, you are on, and no, you are on row. And then what's the piece of code here that's going to give me the row of the button that I have clicked? Who can take us home today? How can we complete this code to give us the row of the button we've clicked? Remember, this do something macro is attached to all of these buttons, so it's going to run when we click on these buttons. What's the line of code we need to complete this? So let me know in the chat, guys. Sorry, it's been quite fast today. I think it's been a very quick pace, but I've had quite a lot to do. So I'm just checking out in the chat. Yeah, Andrew and Daniel, good stuff, saying we need the dot left property. Good stuff. Thomas says things are frozen. Yeah, Thomas, you do need to refresh the browser. It seems like everybody else is okay. And Jasvin, yeah, with a good contribution at the bottom there about how the counter variable is going to be working here. So how to finish off this task? Let's go for a zoomed in view. And we can say active sheet dot buttons application dot caller dot row. How about that? Is that going to work? I'm trying to work it out myself. Is this going to work? So remember, application dot caller gives us the name of the object that triggered the macro, which is usually a button. So we're saying to Excel, give us the row of the button that called this macro. How about that? Andrew Button, yes, application.caller in the chat. Good stuff. So if I now click on, okay, we didn't assign a macro. That was a bit silly, wasn't it? But we can see because of the way we prepared this code, we can quickly delete all the buttons, reassign the macro, right click and then do something. Recreate the buttons, create the buttons, so F5 here, buttons are there. Now they should have a macro attached to them. They do, because I can see we've gone to the pointy finger sign. Hit edit, and then, oh, almost got there. Active sheet up buttons. We're close. I know we're close. What if we just say message box here? Is this not going to work? I know the syntax just needs a bit of a tweak. Okay, not quite there. What if we put a button name here? I think I know what it is. Is it top left cell? Is it? I'm not sure. There we go. And yeah, so we do need that top left cell property in there. So that's the kind of code that, it looks a bit obscure. Certainly if you're just starting out in code, a line of code like this looks obscure, but try to think about it conceptually and in real world terms if you can. So application.caller gives us the name of the thing that called the macro, which is our button. So we're saying to Excel the row number of the top left cell of that button. That's what we're saying to Excel. So we can now click on the buttons and you can see we're getting the rows here. So row 10, row 11, row 14, whatever it might be. So it doesn't look very powerful, does it? Doesn't look particularly special on its own, but you can now take that row number and do any number of things to it. You could take that row number and connect it to some code to populate an email using that row number. You could take that row number, use it to populate a user form to allow the user to quickly change the data in the row. You could use it just to send data from that row to a database, to populate a template somewhere in the file. There's any number of things you can do, but you have to have this one button per row setup. I've used it so many times. It's not something I've learned from anybody else. For once, I didn't steal it from somebody else. I came up with this idea myself. I'm using it all the time in my files at the moment. And here's the code. We've created the code today. So let me know, guys, what do you think about that one? Any final questions in the chat? 21 people watching and 8 likes. Fantastic stuff. So let me know, guys. Yeah, any final questions in the chat, or any questions about what we've done today? I'll just hang around for a few seconds here. Yeah, while I'm here, just remember we have Members Monday coming up, of course. Members Monday coming up after this, and you can go ahead, click join below this video if you want to get involved with our Members Monday community. I can see Zana's with us today, Andrew's with us, Jasfin is with us, a good number of other people with us today with little icons by their names. Tim, Lee, these are all Charles as well. These are all our Members Monday members, and we'd love to have you in there. If you want to take your code to professional level, you'd like to do some freelancing, you'd like to move your career in that direction, maybe you'd like to create some YouTube content, whatever you'd like to do with Excel VBA, it's your professional learning community. We're going to have a fun session today, starting in about 20 minutes. Good stuff. DC says it was fun. I was back to concentration, back to the dashboarding, DC, indeed. Frank says a little quick, but looks very good. I'll watch it offline again. Absolutely, guys. Yeah, we're having to cover quite a lot of ground in these sessions. So definitely get on the replay, pause the video. You'll be able to see the code enough to be able to get it working yourself. Matthias, thanks, Chris. Very good session again. Cheers, Matthias. Frank says, thanks, Chris. And Nikki says, thanks. So, Nikki, hopefully I'll see you Members Monday live very shortly. Good. Can't see any further questions, guys. So thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back at the same time, same place tomorrow for more real world Excel VBA. I'll see you then.